good afternoon once again. Uh, I wonder why my name is so difficult to pronounce. It's actually AbdulHakeem Shaibu, right? Okay. So uh, I'm actually a software developer, and I work at Kano State. I work with a company called eHealth Africa, and at eHealth Africa, we try to provide data-driven solutions to build stronger health systems, which responds to local needs and help underserved communities to live a healthier life. So for my talk, the title, as you know, is Data Management and Publication with CKAN, right? So this is a brief outline. So I'll basically give you an overview of what CKAN is. I'll tell you about the features of CKAN, how to publish data using CKAN, then a little bit on the architecture of CKAN, and lastly, I'll end with my experience using CKAN. So what is CKAN? But before I go into this, I'll like to just provide a quote by Ben Goldis, which says, data is the fabric of the modern world, meaning we use data a lot. So in the organization I work with, we generate a lot of data and we consume a lot of data. So that is not even a problem, but as we know now, in current times, we manage a lot of data, right? And if these data are not organized in a nice way, then you might as well have data which you are not using, which is just like total waste of money or efforts which you use in gathering those data. And that's what CKAN is about. It helps you manage data. So to start with, CKAN as an acronym stands for Comprehensive Knowledge Archive Network, and data portals simply provide a curated list of data sets, and besides that, it provides you with the means of actually accessing these data sets. CKAN is open source, which is nice, and it is written in Python, which is even nicer, right? It's released under the GNU license, and the code is readily available on GitHub, as you expect of an open source application, right? So CKAN as a project started 2007 and has been in active development ever since, right? So it's managed largely by a community of developers, right? And as of now, we have about, or it has about 193 unique contributors, right? Projects like Django and the likes usually have things like foundations to oversee the legal aspects of the project, right? However, CKAN doesn't. What it has in the place of a foundation is an association, which basically oversees the activities of CKAN and its growth, right? And these are the prominent members of CKAN, which you can see, linked digital to Viderium. However, when there are legal matters, the Open Knowledge International usually steps in to handle that, right? So who uses CKAN? As I said, now we're in the age of data, right? With people getting involved with machine learning, artificial intelligence, and, sorry, what you're able to do depends on the data you have, right? So basically there's data everywhere, we generate a lot of data, but are they properly cataloged, right? So the thing is, CKAN is just trying to, bridge that gap to provide solutions to, catalog data. I know organizations have come to realize they really need to do this. So CKAN is basically used by governments, used by businesses, used by several organizations, right? And there's a link just below which provides you with other instances of CKAN out there in the world. So in Africa here, the organization I work with, Hill Health, we actually have 2 instances up that are open to the public. We have the Grid 3 project, which is the georeference infrastructure and demographic data for development, which basically tries to expose all the data we're able to get our hands on besides the one we generate within Nigeria, and make it public and make it available to the public so that businesses can have it at their disposal and draw insights from the data. Then the other portal we maintain is EOC, as Emergency Operations Center. For the fact that my organization, we're actually in the forefront of fighting polio in the northern parts of Nigeria. So all the data that is related to polio activities can actually be found on that portal. Uganda also maintains a portal, and Lake Chad equally has a CKAN instance that they manage. Right, so I'll move on to the features. So as you expect, since CKAN is about cataloging data, you you expect it to have a way to provide means to publish data on the portal and actually manage data, right? So it has a web interface for publishing data, and it equally comes with a powerful API which can use to publish data out of the web UI, maybe to automate some tasks or stuff like that. Then you can also use harvesting tools to get data from other portals into a portal, right? Then when it comes to managing data, definitely the users within the portal usually have 3 roles: admin role, editor role, or a member role. And these all play a part in how data is being managed on the portal. The next feature is search and discovery, which is like the key points of CKAN, because CKAN actually finds a way to bridge the gap between those that have data and those that need data, right? And those that need data, they have to be able to search, right, for what they think should be available on the portal. And if they can't find that, CKAN provides a way to actually explore what is available so that they can determine something close to what they need. Data exploration. So it's not just about finding the data sets you need. CKAN also provides ways of performing some sort of preliminary exploration of the data you have with several kind of views. This is just an example of the view that is available. This is a tabular view which users can use to filter through contents that has been published on the portal, filter through, sort and search to see if it actually meets some of their requirements. If they are conducting a research, for instance. There's another view again that CKAN provides, a map view, so that if the data contains geospatial components, you can easily plot it on a map and see the coverage within a map. Now, file store and data store, another feature of CKAN. As you expect, for the fact that you publish data on CKAN, definitely when you upload file, naturally you should be able to manage those files, right? However, next feature I'm about to talk about is the extensibility of CKAN. Why this is a prominent feature is because you can actually swap out a lot of things in CKAN. So the file store, the way it's implemented, you can actually store your data locally, but you can swap it out and store things maybe externally, maybe using something like AWS S3. Then the data store is another form of storage, but this is for an ad hoc storage where structured data pushed onto the portal actually gets saved in a separate database. And this also helps to improve the search experience on the portal, so that users are not only able to search on the metadata for data sets, but they can equally search the contents of data being pushed onto the portal, right? Extensible, I just talked about this. Every part of CKAN is extensible, and the whole of CKAN, coming from the templates to the implementations of the behavior, everything can actually be swapped out. And the community has really worked hard to extend CKAN in ways not available in the core implementation as extensions, just plugins, and they are readily available on GitHub. Right? Rich API for data access. Yes, for developers in the house, it's very hard for you to write any program now that you don't basically work with APIs, right? But the funny thing is we are all accustomed to accessing REST APIs, REST this, REST that. However, CKAN is a little bit old school in the sense that its API are published RPC style. Simply what this means is, rather than develop such that you have a section which is just dedicated to exposing an API, then you have probably maybe your controllers or some other aspects of your implementation accessing the API, or the API is just dedicated to the web interface. CKAN has a single code base for most of the logic it wants to expose, right? So the APIs equally hit the same functions the UIs call into. So that's just how RPC is structured, right? And in a way, it's also pseudo REST in the sense that it consumes JSON and publishes a JSON document. Now, how do you publish data on CKAN, right? So CKAN has the concepts of organizations and groups. Basically, anybody that has used forums, we are quite conversant with that, right? So organizations talking in the context of maybe an open data portal, right? An open data portal in the sense that a lot of organizations are using the portal to publish data they want to make accessible to the public, right? Each organization has a section within the portal where they get to manage their own data sets, and the users that have privileges to add data sets, edit, or remove data sets. So CKAN comes with that. It's just a way to manage users and data sets. And then next, we have groups. So groups is under cataloging structure that basically ties together all data sets that have been published on the portal that have similar theme so that they are available under a single umbrella, right? So publishing data. This is actually what whoever is managing a CKAN instance, this is what he spends most of his time doing, creating data sets and resources. So usually I like to think of a data set as a folder, right? Then the resources basically as files inside the folder. And what a data set does is it collects together a related set of resources, whereby the resources could be related either by content published in different formats, or they are related in the sense that they talk about the same data but over a different time span, right? And usually when you create data sets under organizations, right? So data sets don't exist outside of organizations. They all have to be created under an organization, and equally, resources don't exist outside of data sets. They have to be within data sets. You can't create a resource under an organization. So that's why I said think of it, or I like to think of it as data sets are folders and resources are just files under those folders. So creating data sets. Data sets is really central to the concept of CKAN, right? So apart from the data you are publishing, which could be a lot, a data set could have one or more resources, you want to describe those data sets. Right? So when you're creating your data set, basically you provide fields that describe that data. For instance, the title of the data set, the description, the license under which most of data are being published, the visibility, and so on, right? Which there are some default fields already defined. Then should there be a case where you want to describe the data set beyond the provisions made within CKAN, it has a mechanism to actually allow you to define custom fields which can even use to describe the data further. The reason for this is because every search that happens within a CKAN instance is actually being made against the data sets, right? And to a large extent, if you have structured data, then definitely they will also participate. So there's a lot of focus on data sets, right? So for every data set you create, you can have one or more resource. And to create a data set, you need to create at least one resource. A resource is very easy. A resource represents the data you actually upload into the portal. And if you don't have data to upload, but you have external data you want to reference, then definitely you can create a resource from that. And if you have an application which generates data, you can also do that. Provide a link to an application that generates data, and it will equally be served as a resource, right? Now, on that way, to manage organization or to manage data within CKAN, which I spoke about, is to use the API. And CKAN actually provides an independent tool for this, right? It's called the CKAN API, and you can actually use this to automate a lot of tasks that could do with maybe creating data sets, backing up data sets if you so choose. Like in my organization, what we actually do is we use this tool, but we build a wrapper around it so that we're able to, for the fact that we tear down our development instance almost every now and then, so our production instance, we're able to back it up using the API tool, and when development instance is up, then we just push the whole thing there. And if we have updates to make, we maintain a file outside of CKAN that we update, and we use the API CKAN API tool to push those updates. Right? Managing organizations. So this, as I said, within organizations, you expect to have users, right? In the context of an open data portal, for instance, where several organizations are engaged and participating in publishing data for the public, you want every organization to have, to be able to manage its users, right? So within organizations, users that are admin are able to invite other users into the portal so that they're able to edit data or see private data sets, right? Although I said open data portal is at times within an organization you might want to actually publish private data, right? Or if I speak in context of an organization, not an open data portal now, several departments will actually use CKAN and have as an organization a department, and within that department, besides publishing data they want to share with other departments, they might want to keep some other data private, right? But definitely you want to share access with the CEO, probably, right? So that he has access to that. So within the management structures, you can actually include users to be part of an organization, right? Now, lastly, for publishing data, as I said, there's access control, which keys into the visibility metadata for datasets, right? The visibility simply indicates whether a dataset is public or it's private. If it's public, then basically anybody that has access to CKAN is able to see the data. However, if you are outside of the organization and a data set is published as private, then you need to be part of the organization to see it. So this little diagram simply shows that a user trying to access the data set, the first thing CKAN checks is the visibility. If it's public, he has access. If it isn't public, it checks whether he's a member of the organization under which data set was published. If he is, he gets access. Otherwise, the dataset is even excluded from the listing. He doesn't know about it. Now, the CKAN architecture. So it's not really, I'm not really talking about architecture in terms of technical stuff too much, right? So this is just to give an overview of things to expect when developing with CKAN, right? It's written in Python, Python 2, Python 3 support is, I guess, probably on the way. And it's an oddball for the fact that it uses two web frameworks. It uses Flask and it uses Pylons. Pylons has been discontinued, right? But it still uses Pylons. And basically what it does, it has a wrapper, it has several wrapper functions that basically shield developers using CKAN from the intricacies of each of these frameworks and having to sort out when to use Flask or when to use Pylons. The templating is based on Ginger, the ORM, SQL Alchemy, then other tools that are being used outside of CKAN. We have Postgres, the PostgreSQL, and most of the search or all of the search that happens within CKAN is actually powered by Apache Solr, right? Then it's also presented in Docker form to ease deployment. The job and task queues are being managed by the library RQ as opposed to Celery that most people are well aware of. So this is the CKAN architecture as you expect of every web framework. It's model view controller, right? The route is where you hit from the internet, goes to the views, then the APIs, logic, and model. The thing that really caught my attention when I was going through the code of CKAN is where other frameworks, or their implementation rather, they chose rather than using decorators for security to actually call the functions within, right? So when you're actually trying to access maybe data and it goes through several functions, you find that you get to hit some security function calls like multiple times. You might see it as if it's a waste of effort, but I actually like this because it makes the implementation very, very secure, right? So it's extensible in the sense that basically everything or some core parts are provided as plugins, and there are several plugins that can be gotten outside of CKAN to extend the features. Right, so now my experience with CKAN, right? So basically my experience with CKAN revolves around two projects which I made mention of, the GRID project and the EOC project. So the GRID actually is, we expect it to be like an open data portal for Nigeria, right? With a special focus on the state governments driving the efforts and engagement around these portals. So what we had to do was to rebrand and repurpose some of the implementations of CKAN to support the structures we wanted. So where you have organizations in core CKAN, we made it states, then extended the features to meet states. Where you have groups, we extended that so that it becomes sectors, right? It still gives the same basic functionality, but now we had to repurpose it a lot and extend. And another thing we worked on was the access model. By default, private datasets are not available to just regular users on the portal, right? We had to break that up so that regular users, anonymous users, can also view all private data sets on a portal regardless of their access. But for private data sets, you have to make a special request to have that data, and that request aspect, we had to build a plugin for that. The next project is EOC, which I spoke about, which is our efforts around eradicating polio within northern parts of Nigeria. This, we didn't customize the structure of CKAN so much, but it was all about integrations, right? Because we had people going into the field to check, to gather data on reported cases of polio and submitting data to a platform. So what we wanted was an automated way of bringing those data into our CKAN instance for EOC without having to resort to manual means. So it was more of integration than making changes, although we made several changes, but we focused a lot on integrations. And these are some of the things we integrated with Gather 2, or rather Gather. The latest version is 2. I'm so used to that. So this is, it's ODK compliant for those that, do a lot of data gathering. There's an application ODK Collect which you can use to gather data in the field. So what this does is an aggregation platform where data gets collected, and it integrates into CKAN. EOC portal is able to pull data in there. On that platform that integrates with EOC is called Aether. For the fact that we work with a lot of data and we had several challenges and we had experience, working with data, we felt it was necessary to have a separate platform which could actually speak to different sources as consumers, consume data, and actually publish whatever has been consumed to different other sources. So that, case in point, EOC now, we had to build a special integration to Gather, right? But with Aether now, all we have to do is integrate our EOC to Aether, and Aether is able to communicate with other data sources, be it CKAN or so, and publish to any other data source, a database or CKAN if you so wish. So this is actually the last slide, but if I go to the last page, I'll just try to employ, especially those picking up Python, to actually give CKAN a shot, maybe not as a product, but the code base itself. It has some of the finest codes I've seen, right? A staunch advocate for frameworks like Pyramid that most people don't hear about, but going through their code base is actually mind-bending, and I kind of like it. But something like CKAN, it has one of the best architectures I've seen, security-wise and structure-wise. So I'll really employ anyone new to Python, or actually, someone that has a lot of experience in Python, to dig into the codes and give it a try. And the portal can also be put to use by schools, for instance. That's what I can think of, by schools, whereby, projects, when people finish from school, you have your project. You can actually use something like CKAN to have a portal where all projects are available and people get access to it. So thank you very much.